Welcome back to JIMBS. My name is Melissa Mitchell from here in Australia from Abundant Life Studio. Today I've been asked to react to I hated Islam until, and then in brackets, this is my story. This is by the CJ Werleman Show, and I have done one reaction video to this channel before. I don't know much about this man, but he seems to be possibly, I thought Australian, but when I listened to him last time, he could be a Kiwi from New Zealand, I'm thinking. So it's quite interesting from being from this part of the world to listen to him and his perspective. And I think he gives a very honest opinion. So I'm and insight into, these types of stories. So before we get started, make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Let us know what you thought of the videos. If you like this reaction, if you like this video, give us the thumbs up, leave some comments below and share JIMBS with your family and friends. This video was uploaded 3 weeks ago with 112,000 views. So that is really, really good. And the channel has around 95,000 subscribers, which is a really great channel. So I hated Islam until ... This is my story by the CJ Werleman Show. So we're going to push play. I expect this to be a very insightful video. I know the last video I reacted to from this channel was very insightful and very, how do I say it? So I believe the man who hosts it is not Muslim himself, but he does bring to light a lot of the myths and the inconsistencies that people do believe about Islam. So I really like the concept of this, and I'm expecting this video to be the same. So we'll push play, we'll see what it's about, and I'll give you my opinion at the end. Here we go. I hated Islam until, this is my story.
Hello everyone, I'm CJ Werleman. Don't forget to click the subscribe button below, and we kindly ask you please help keep our show going and growing by supporting my journalism at patreon.com/CJWerleman. Now let's get into it. A question I'm often asked by viewers of his program is, why do I care so much about injustices in the Muslim world when I'm not, in fact, a Muslim? So here it goes. I do hold a great deal of affection for Islam, which is unsurprising given I have studied the religion intimately and professionally for the past dozen years,
wow,
while also spending a great amount of time living among and working with Muslim communities. And I can also tell you this, that as an agnostic, were I to one day be convinced of a holy creator, then I have no doubt that Islam would be the religion for me. Because as a journalist and a human rights activist, no other faith speaks to the values I hold dear to my heart.
Okay.
You see, Islam not only promotes justice and respect for human rights, but also teaches people to live together in peace and harmony, regardless of race, class and belief. But with all of that said, I held a completely different attitude towards Islam exactly 17 years ago. In fact, I was an Islamophobe. For a 4-year period after witnessing an Al-Qaeda-sponsored terrorist attack in Indonesia in 2005. A night when 2 suicide bombers detonated themselves among women and children on Bali's Jimbaran beach, killing 23 people.
I know this.
It fell upon me and 4 of my closest friends to sort the living from the dead, and then move the injured to an area safely away from the beach until ambulances arrived. That night would forever change the trajectory of my life, because until that moment I had never given Islam a second thought, even though I had lived permanently in Indonesia for 2 years at that point. But for the days, weeks and months that followed, I became obsessed with Islam and blamed it for the horrific violence I witnessed that evening.
It was a typical Saturday night on Bali's tourist strip, holiday makers packing bars and restaurants, and all of them easy prey for bombers intent on causing the maximum possible carnage. And a warning to viewers, some of the following images may be disturbing.
I'm not going to share those images because you get the point. But what's important here is that over the course of the next several months, I went from being agnostic towards religion to a fully fledged Islam-hating new atheist. The anti-religious books of Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and others made me believe Islam was responsible for terrorism. Crazy, I now know. But in many ways I was radicalized into anti-religious extremism, or what is Islamophobia, the same way many are radicalized into violent religious extremism. Here's Professor Lorne Dawson to explain how experiencing a traumatic event can often create a cognitive opening, making an individual receptive to the possibility of new ideas and worldview.
There's almost always a contingent factor that just when they were feeling and thinking a certain way, they met certain people. And it's quite accidental. We talk about cognitive openings. So you've peeled away your old ideas, you're opening to new ideas, you're in a fragile frame of mind, you're looking for some guidance and leadership, and along comes at that moment somebody with a clear set of beliefs and ideas that are about saving the world and about how you, little old you, can make a difference and change the world.
But not only was my changing worldview being influenced by popular anti-Islam writers, but also the US-led war on terror, which by 2005 had morphed into a fully fledged war on Muslims. We were being led to believe the Quran was responsible for 9/11, the London bombings, and the attack I witnessed in Bali. We were told that this was a clash of civilizations, that Islam has bloody borders, while the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan were sold as civilizing missions. I'm still ashamed to admit that for a brief period in my life, I sounded a lot like this hateful clown.
We need to end Muslim immigration temporarily. I'm not saying forever. I do also think we should stop building mosques temporarily, not forever.
In 2008, I published a book that condemned religion, all religions, and it gave me a large audience among the growing anti-Islam crowd in the United States. But long ago I instructed my publisher to remove the book from print because it no longer reflects the person I am today. So I now know what you're thinking. What was it that made me, CJ, suddenly wake up and realize that my hateful attitudes towards Islam were wrong? Well, for a lack of a better phrase, my first come to Muhammad moment occurred in 2009 when I read Mahmoud Mamdani's book, which unpacked many of the lies the mainstream media was telling about Islam during the early years of the war on terror.
I was struck by the fact that the New York Times kept on reporting that more and more Americans were buying copies of the Quran in order to gain an insight into the motivation of those who hijacked planes and hit them into the Twin Towers. And the New York Times eventually reported that the Quran was one of the best sellers in American bookshops. I was struck by it because I thought of my own family, friends, people I knew back home in Kampala, and as the weeks and months and years rolled by, and as the US invaded Iraq and bombed Iraq, I wondered whether my parents or relatives or cousins or friends were going to bookshops to buy copies of the Bible to get an insight into why the US was bombing Iraq. And of course I realized they weren't. I didn't even think the people of Fallujah were trying to get a clue as to why bombs were raining on them by reading the Bible, even though the President of the US was claiming biblical inspiration for these set of events.
This book ignited a fire within me. It made me want to understand Islam in a deep and intimate way. And because I was fortunate to be living in Indonesia at the time, I had access to some truly great Islamic scholars. Through them I came to understand how the Quran and Islamic hadiths squared with the life and times of the Prophet Muhammad. I came to see him as a remarkably inspirational figure, an individual who not only defended his people against devious enemies, but also a leader who delivered justice, peace and equality while eradicating corruption and vice. He was a revolutionary against oppression and injustice, the same way Jesus Christ stood up for the downtrodden and those crushed under the heel of Roman occupation. Ultimately, I guess what you can say is this, that whereas an Islamist terrorist attack had turned me into an anti-Islam bigot, studying the Quran and experiencing Islamic culture turned me into an activist against Islamophobia. And I've spent much of the past 14 years using my journalism to counter the kind of Islamophobic tropes and narratives that once seduced me. You see, Islamophobia is seductive because it feels good, for it allows you to believe it's they who are backwards and barbaric, and it's we who are enlightened and civilized. It's the great lie told by all colonial powers to justify the pacification and subjugation of those who stand in the way of our capitalist exploits and imperial projects. It allows you to forget the horrors and injustices carried out in our name against the less fortunate other. Islamophobia also allows you to pretend that European colonialism never destroyed civic, social and political life in Muslim-majority countries it occupied. It allows you to pretend violence in Muslim-majority countries is the product of ancient rivalries and not the legacy of colonial, divide and rule strategies. Islamophobia also allows you to pretend the problems within our own societies are not the products of our choices, but rather the import of an external other. It's not us, it's them, and if we can just rid ourselves of them, then all will be good here, they say. But the good news is this: Islamophobia is indeed curable. I was cured by understanding Islam from Muslims, rather than from those who wish only to profit from the demonization of them. I was cured by taking a closer look at my country's role in the global cycle of violence. I was cured because I became aware I was unwell, but if I can cure myself to the psychological disease that is Islamophobia, then you can too. You, like me, will come to see the unique and unmistakable beauty that sits within the Islamic faith. You just need to take the first leap. As for me, I continue to seek and attain a better understanding of what is indeed the world's most beautiful religion. Anyway, that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support this endeavor by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWelderman. We can't produce, sustain and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.
Wow. Wow, that was exactly how I expected it to be, but even better. I need to Google, let me just Google, I need to know where he's from. He sounds Australian to me, but there's that little twang there that could be New Zealand. And I just want to know, because I just want to offer some insight into what he talked about for Bali. Where is, just give me a moment. From, because it could be that he's being defamed. Oh, he is Australian. Okay. I thought he could have been Kiwi because there's just a little bit of his accent. And I think that's because he's spent so many years overseas. I really like that. What I like about it is the fact that he is, I'm certainly not like him, but what I'm saying, I relate to a lot of the things that he says. One, I've lived overseas. I've lived in Dubai for a number of years. I'm in Australia now, but in my previous life, I lived in Dubai, and I was in Dubai when the Iraq war was on, and I was flying for an airline, a Middle Eastern airline, and I was safe. I was safe and I was secure, and I was flying into countries that were involved in the war or near to the war. You know, we would fly around different airspace because of the war that was happening and everything, but I was there then and I was safe. And a lot of people are saying, what are you doing? Get out of there. And they just assumed because I was in Dubai that I was unsafe, even though, you know, Iraq was, it's in that region, but it's not near Dubai. I was, you know, I was safe where I was. So people didn't understand that. And it was quite interesting for people back in other countries to say, you know, oh, do you feel safe? Do you do this? And say, of course, you know, I felt safe there. I didn't feel the need to come back to Australia while the war was on or anything like that. There was no problem. When he spoke about Bali, and I know being an Australian and the New Zealanders are the same, we are very connected to Indonesia. It is our closest to neighbour. A lot of us go there for holidays because Australia is such a big country and we are really nowhere near any other countries, you know, as in, you know, like if you're in Europe, you can travel, or if you're in Asia, etc., you're so close to other countries. In Australia, we're not. So Indonesia is very close to Australia, you know, as is New Zealand and Fiji and countries like that. But so a lot of us do go to Indonesia, to Bali, of course, which is very touristy, but a lot of people go to Jakarta and further on. And the bombing that he's talking about, we heard about this here because, being in Australia and a lot of Australians go there. I have been to that restaurant. That particular one is on the beach, I believe. I don't know about now, but at the time it was a seafood restaurant, and I've been there. And so hearing about it and you connect with it, and it is really confronting and it's scary, because in Australia we don't have things like this happen. So the phobia and the fear also is propelled from that. It's propelled from the government. I don't really want to say from Australia too much. Yes, of course, there's a little bit of it here, but I don't feel that it's, there's pockets here, of course, that they're against Islam, but there's also pockets that are against the Christians and the Jews and the Catholics. So, but obviously, when I'd fly into countries living in the Middle East, America was such a big influence on that. So Australians will hear what the Americans are saying and like, it feeds fear. So, yeah, it was really interesting what he's saying there. I really enjoyed that, because I like that he's agnostic yet says, but hey, I'm not against it. I'm going to fight for this religion, because for me, I'm an atheist. And he sort of answered one of the questions for me. A lot of people say, why are you an atheist? And a number of reasons. One, I wasn't born into any religion, and I know that's hard for people to understand, but for me, it is not normal to follow a religion. It's just not, because I wasn't born into it. So my life and my normality to me, which for many Australians is we just don't have a religion. It's just normal for us. But secondly, as he said as well, as Chris said, sorry, I don't know if his name's Chris, it's CJ, until someone can definitively prove that, I'm a bit the same being an atheist as well. So I really resonated with what he said about that. And I understand the Quran, like as in the more I learn about it and the evidence and everything. But to me, I need more than that. I need to understand more than that for me to be a believer. But I respect Islam and I respect all walks of life and religion. But I do want to point out as well, as much as people sort of say, there's terrorists in Islam and that sort of thing. And, I want to point out the Catholic Church, there's a lot of bad people in the Catholic Church. They may not be going out there and bombing somebody or, but what they're doing in some, and again, it's not all Catholics. Of course, I'm not going to tar everyone, just like I wouldn't tar Islam as all terrorists. I don't tar all Catholics as, bad people. But the Catholic Church, there is pedophilia, there is so many bad things against children that happen in the Catholic Church, and they sweep it under the carpet and they get away with it and no one talks about it. Well, people talk about it, but the focus should be on that. Not that Islam is all terrorists. Let's support the children that are getting hurt in the Catholic Church. It blows my mind the way people think and act. But saying that, I don't tar everyone in the Catholic Church or every Christian to be tarred with that same brush, nor do I think that every single Muslim is a terrorist. I've said this many times on the JIMBS channel. My best friend is Muslim. I have another friend who's from Finland, and she's very Christian, and I accept that. I have another friend in Melbourne who is Jewish. We accept that. He is a family friend. So I accept everything. And I love what CJ Werleman is doing, because he's saying, it did happen after the Bali bombings, which were 2 nightclubs in Bali, in Indonesia. Then the other one that he's talking about, Jimbaran, I think that's how you say it, Bay, at the restaurant. and then the war on terror, and then the Twin Towers in America, and everyone just like, oh, it's the Muslims. Well, it's not. It's not. It's bad people that are just bad people doing it. It's not that they're Catholic or Christian or Muslim or whatever. It's just people who have done the wrong thing. Just like some Americans or some Australians or people in your country. There's good and bad in every single country. And the world will be a better place if we just accept that we all have different values, as in, religious views and beliefs and traditions and customs. And just respect that. I wholeheartedly respect religion. And I've had nothing but respect on the JIMBS channel for being an atheist. People, are curious as to why, but people respect me. And I love that, because to me, this is my way of life. And I'm a good person, I work with a lot of charities. I spent many years at an orphanage in Bangladesh when I used to travel there, and financially and physically supported an orphanage there while I was able to go to Bangladesh with the airline. I do good things. I'm not a bad person. I'm just an atheist. And so getting back to this, that's what I really resonate with CJ Werleman, is that he's saying, I'm not a Muslim, but I'm going to fight for it. We all should fight for everyone's equal rights. Color, creed, demographic, religion views, we all should be respectful of each other. So really great video. If I had 20 thumbs, I'd give 20 thumbs up, but I don't. So I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up, but a really great video. I hated Islam until, this is my story, the CJ Werleman show. Really, really enjoyed it. And I think he's spreading a really good message. If you enjoyed this, make sure to leave your comments below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and click the notifications so that when JIMBS next uploads their videos, that you get notified. Share JIMBS with your family and friends. Share the link around. We would love more people to come and check out our channel. So until next time, my name is Melissa Mitchell from here in Australia, Abundant Life Studio, and you're watching JIMBS. See you then. Bye.